We've got to build a better politics. One that's less of a spectacle and more of a battle of ideas. One that's less of a business and more of a mission. One that understands the success of the American experiment rests on our willingness to engage all our citizens in this work. And that starts by acknowledging that we do have a problem, and we all know it. What's different today is the nature and the extent of the polarization, how ideologically divided the parties are. It's brought about by some of the same long-term trends in our politics and our culture. The parties themselves have become more homogeneous than ever. A great sorting has taken place. It drove Southern conservatives out of the Democratic Party, Northern moderates out of the Republican Party. So you don't have within each party as much diversity of views. And you've got a fractured media. Some folks watch Fox News. Some folks read the Huffington Post. And very often,
our own facts. We don't have a common basis.
We can choose our own facts. We don't have a common basis for what's true and what's not. I mean, if I listen to some of these conservative pundits, I wouldn't vote for me either. I sound like a scary guy. You've got advocacy groups that, frankly, sometimes benefit from keeping their members agitated as much as possible, assured of the righteousness of their cause. Unlimited dark money, money that nobody knows where it's coming from, who's paying, drowns out ordinary voices. And far too many of us surrender our voices entirely by choosing not to vote. And this polarization is pervasive, and it seeps into our society to the point where surveys even suggest that many Americans wouldn't want their kids to date someone from another political party. Now, some of us don't want our kids dating, period, but that's a losing battle. But this isn't just an abstract problem for political scientists. This has real impact on whether or not we can get things done together. This has a real impact on whether families are able to support themselves, or whether the homeless are getting shelter on a cold day. It makes a difference as to the quality of the education that kids are getting. This is not an abstraction. But so often, these debates, particularly in Washington, but increasingly in state legislatures, become abstractions. It's as if there are no people involved. It's just cardboard cutouts and caricatures of positions. It encourages the kind of ideological fealty that rejects any compromise as a form of weakness. And in a big, complicated democracy like ours, if we can't compromise, by definition, we can't govern ourselves. Look, I am a progressive Democrat. I'm proud of that. I make no bones about it. I believe, I'm going to make another point here. I believe that people should have access to health care. I believe they should have access to good public education. I believe that workers deserve a higher minimum wage. I believe that collective bargaining is critical to the prospects of the middle class, and that pensions are vital to retirement as long as they're funded responsibly. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Sit down, Democrats. Sit down. Sit down. Just for a second. I appreciate that, but I want to make this larger point. I believe we're judged by how we care for the poor and the vulnerable. I believe that in order to live up to our ideals, we have to continually fight discrimination in all its forms. I believe in science and the science behind things like climate change, and that a transition to cleaner sources of energy will help preserve the planet for future generations. I believe in a tough, smart foreign policy that says America will never hesitate to protect our people and our allies, but that we should use every element of our power and never rush to war. Those are the things I believe. But here's the point I want to make. I believe that there are a lot of Republicans who share many of these same values, even though they may disagree with me on the means to achieve them. I think sometimes my Republican colleagues make constructive points about outdated regulations that may need to be changed, or programs that, even though well-intended, didn't always work the way they were supposed to. And where I've got an opportunity to find some common ground, that doesn't make me a sellout to my own party. That applies now. The same. Well, we'll talk later, Duncan. You just see it. So. This is what happens. Everybody starts cherry picking. Those are the things I believe. But here's the point I want to make. I believe that there are a lot of Republicans who share many of these same values, even though they may disagree with me on the means to achieve them. I think sometimes my Republican colleagues make constructive points about outdated regulations that may need to be changed, or programs that, even though well-intended, didn't always work the way they were supposed to. And where I've got an opportunity to find some common ground, that doesn't make me a sellout to my own party. That applies now. The same. Well, we'll talk later, Duncan. You just see it. So. This is what happens. Everybody starts cherry picking. One thing I've learned is folks don't change. So trying to find common ground doesn't make me less of a Democrat or less of a progressive. It means I'm trying to get stuff done. And the same applies to a Republican who, heaven forbid, might agree with me on a particular issue. Or if I said America's great decided to stand during the State of the Union. It's not a controversial proposition. You're not going to get in trouble. But the fact that that's hard to do, that is a testament to how difficult our politics has become. Because folks are worried, well, I'm going to get yelled at by here, or this blogger's going to write that, or, this talk show host is going to talk about me, and suddenly I've got to challenge her, and calling me a rhino, or, not a real progressive. So when I hear voices in either party boast of their refusal to compromise as an accomplishment in and of itself, I'm not impressed. All that does is prevent what most Americans would consider actual accomplishments, like fixing roads, educating kids, passing budgets, cleaning our environment, making our streets safe. Well, it cuts both ways, guys. See, it sounds like everybody's standing. This is fascinating to watch. Point is, it cuts both ways. Our founders trusted us with the keys to this system of self-government. Our politics is the place where we try to make this incredible machinery work, where we come together to settle our differences and solve big problems, do big things together that we could not possibly do alone. And our founders anchored all this in a visionary constitution that separates power and demands compromise, precisely to prevent one party or one wing of a party or one faction or some powerful interest from getting 100% of its way. So when either side makes blanket promises to their base that it can't possibly meet, tax cuts without cuts to services, everything will be fine, but we won't spend any money. War without shared sacrifice. We're going to be tough, but don't worry, it'll be fine. Union bashing or corporate bashing without acknowledging that both workers and businesses make our economy run. That kind of politics means that the supporters will be perennially disappointed. It only adds to folks' sense that the system is rigged. It's one of the reasons why we see these big electoral swings every few years. It's why people are so cynical. Now, I don't pretend to have all the answers to this. These trends will not change overnight. If I did, I would have already done them through an executive action. That was just a joke, guys. Relax. A sense of humor is also helpful. But I do want to offer some steps that we could take that I believe would help reform our institutions and move our system in a way that helps reflect our better selves. And these aren't particularly original, but I just want to go ahead and mention. First is to take, or at least reduce, some of the corrosive influence of money in our politics. Now, this year, just over 150 families have spent as much on the presidential race as the rest of America combined. Today, a couple of billionaires in one state can push their agenda, dump dark money into every state. Nobody knows where it's coming from. Mostly used on these dark ads. Everybody's kind of dark. The worst picture possible. And there's some ominous voice talking about how, we're destroying the country. And they spend this money based on some ideological preference that really is disconnected to the realities of how people live. They're not that concerned about the particulars of what's happening in a union hall in Galesburg and what folks are going through trying to find a job. They're not particularly familiar with what's happening in a VFW post. Somebody's phone's on. In Carbondale, They haven't heard personally from farmers outside of the quads and what they're going through. Those are the voices that should be outweighing a handful of folks with a lot of money. I'm not saying the folks with a lot of money should have no voice. I'm saying they shouldn't be able to drown out everybody else's. And that's why I disagree with the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision. I don't believe that money is speech, or that political spending should have no limits, or that it shouldn't be disclosed. I still support a constitutional amendment to set reasonable limits on financial influence in America's elections. But amending the Constitution is an extremely challenging and time-consuming process, as it should be. So we're going to have to come up with more immediate ways to reduce the influence of money in politics. There are a lot of good proposals out there, and we have to work to find ones that can gain some bipartisan support, because a handful of families and hidden interests shouldn't be able to bankroll elections in the greatest democracy on earth. Second step towards a better politics is rethinking the way that we draw our congressional districts. And now, let me point this out. I want to point this out because this is another case of cherry picking here. This tends to be popular in states where Democrats have been drawing the lines among Republicans, and less popular among Republicans where they control drawing the lines. So nobody's, let's be very clear. Nobody's got clean hands on this thing. Nobody's got clean hands on this thing. Fact is, today technology allows parties in power to precision draw constituencies so that the opposition supporters are packed into as few districts as possible. That's why our districts are shaped like earmuffs or spaghetti. It's also how one party can get more seats even when it gets fewer votes. And while this gerrymandering may insulate some incumbents from a serious challenge from the other party, it also means that the main thing those incumbents are worried about are challengers from the most extreme voices in their own party. That's what's happened in Congress. You wonder why Congress doesn't work? The House of Representatives there may be a handful, less than 10% of districts that are even competitive at this point. So if you're a Republican, all you're worried about is what somebody to your right is saying about you, because you know you're not going to lose the general election. Same is true for a lot of Democrats. So our debates move away from the middle, where most Americans are, towards the far ends of the spectrum, and that polarizes us further. Now this is something we have the power to fix. And once the next census rolls around, and we have the most up-to-date picture of America's population, we should change the way our districts are drawn. In America, politicians should not pick their voters. Voters should pick their politicians. And this needs to be done across the nation, not just in a select few states. It should be done everywhere. Now, the more Americans use their voice and participate, the less captive our politics will be to narrow constituencies, no matter how much undisclosed money is spent, no matter how many negative ads are run, no matter how unrepresentative a district is drawn. If everybody voted, if a far larger number of people voted, that would overcome, in many ways, some of these other institutional barriers. It'd make our politics better. And that's why a third step towards a better politics is making voting easier, not harder, and modernizing it for the way that we live now. Now, this shouldn't be controversial, guys. You like the redistricting thing, but not letting people vote. I should get some applause on that too. Look. Listen. 3 years ago, I set up a bipartisan commission to improve the voting experience in America. It had the election lawyers from my campaign and from Mitt Romney's campaign. They got together outside of the context of immediate politics. And I actually want to thank this Assembly for moving to adopt some of its recommendations. Thanks to the good work of my dear friend Senator Don Harmon and many of you, there's a new law going into effect this year that will allow Illinois to register and vote at the polls on Election Day. It expands early voting, something that makes it a lot easier for working folks and busy parents to go vote. Think about it. If you're a single mom and you got to take public transportation to punch a clock, work round the clock, get home, cook dinner on a Tuesday in bad weather, that's tough. Why would we want to make it so that you couldn't do it on a Saturday or a Sunday? How is that advancing our democracy? So this law will make a difference. I'm proud of my home state for helping to lead the way. And we know this works. In 2012 and 2014, the states with the highest voter turnout all had same-day registration. So today I ask every state in America to join us. Reduce these barriers to voting. Make it easier for your constituents to get out and vote. And I'd encourage this Assembly to take the next step. Senator Menard and Representative Gable have bills that would automatically register every eligible citizen to vote when they apply for a driver's license. That would protect the fundamental right of everybody, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, seniors, folks with disabilities, the men and women of our military. It would make sure that it was easier for them to vote and to have their vote counted. And as one of your constituents, I think you should pass that legislation right away. I think the governor should sign it without delay. Let's make the land of Lincoln a leader in voter participation. That's something we should be proud to do. Let's set the pace. Encourage other states across the country to follow our lead, making automatic voter registration the new norm across America. Now, just during the course of this talk, it's been interesting to watch the dynamics, obviously. In part because so much of our politics now is just designed for short-term tactical gain. If you think that having more voters will hurt you on Election Day, then suddenly you're not interested in participation. Now, if you think that the gerrymander is helping you instead of hurting you, then you're not for those proposals. We get trapped in these things. We know better. If we were setting up a set of rules ahead of time, and you didn't know where you stood, which party you're going to be in, you didn't have all the data and the poll numbers to tell you what's going to give you an edge or not, you'd set up a system that was fair. You encourage everybody to be part of it. That's what we learned in our civics books. That's how it should work. It's the fact that we can't do that, that brings me to my last point, which is even as we change the way the system works, we also have a responsibility to change the way that we, as elected officials and as citizens, work together. Because this democracy only works when we get both right, when the system's fair, but also when we build a culture that is trying to make it work. Now, recently I've been thinking a lot about something a friend of mine, Deval Patrick, once said to his constituents when he was governor of Massachusetts. He said, "Insist from us and from each other a modicum of civility as the condition for serving you." This is what he told voters. insist on us having a modicum of civility. I think that's something that all of us as Americans have to insist from each other. Our children are watching what we do. They don't just learn it in school, they learn it by watching us. The way we conduct ourselves, the way we treat each other. If we lie about each other, they learn it's okay to lie. If they make up facts and ignore science, then they just think it's just their opinion that matters. If they see us insulting each other like school kids, then they think, well, I guess that's how people are supposed to behave. The way we respect or don't each other as citizens will determine whether or not the hard, frustrating, but absolutely necessary work of self-government continues. I've got daughters that are getting older now, and one of the most important things about being a parent, I think, is them just seeing what you do, not when you're out in public, not when you're dealing with somebody important, but just how do you treat people generally. It makes me much more mindful. I want to live up to their expectations. And in that same way, I want this democracy to live up to the people's expectations. We can't move forward if all we do is tear each other down. And the political incentives, as they are today, too often rewards that kind of behavior. That's what gets attention. So it will require some courage just to act the way our parents taught us to act. It shouldn't. But in this political environment, apparently it does. We've got to insist to do better from each other, for each other. Rather than reward those who would disenfranchise any segment of America, we've got to insist that everybody arm themselves with information and facts and that they vote. If 99% of us voted, it wouldn't matter how much the 1% spends on our elections. Rather than reward the most extreme voices or the most divisive language, or who is best at launching schoolyard taunts, we should insist on a higher form of political discourse in our common life. One based on empathy and respect, which does not mean you abandon principle. Doesn't mean you're not tough. Rather than paint those who disagree with us as motivated by malice, to suggest that any of us lack patriotism, we can insist, as Lincoln did, that we are not enemies but friends. That our fellow Americans are not only entitled to a different point of view, but that they love this country as much as we do. Rather than reward 24/7 media that so often thrives on sensationalism and conflict, we have to stand up and insist, no, reason matters, facts matter. Issues are complicated. When folks just make stuff up, they can't go unchallenged. And that's true for Democrats if you hear a Democrat make something up. That's true for a Republican if you see a Republican cross that line. Rather than accept the notion that compromise is a sellout to one side, we've got to insist on the opposite. That it can be a genuine victory that means progress for all sides. And rather than preventing our kids from dating people in other parties, well, I may have issues about dating generally, but we can trust that we've raised our kids to do the right thing and to look at the qualities of people's character, not some label attached to it. And maybe most of all, whenever someone begins to grow cynical about our politics or believes that their actions can't make a difference or it's not worth participating in, we've got to insist, even against all evidence to the contrary, that in fact they can make a difference. And in this job of being a citizen of the United States of America, that's a big deal. It's something we should revere and take seriously. Now, Abraham Lincoln wasn't always the giant that we think of today. He liked formal schooling. His businesses and his law practices often struggled. After just one term in Congress, his opposition to the Mexican-American War damaged his reputation so badly he did not run for re-election. He was denounced as a traitor, a demagogue, an enemy sympathizer. He returned to his law practice and admitted he was losing interest in politics entirely. And then something happened that shook his conscience. Congress effectively overturned the Missouri Compromise, that flawed and fragile law that had prohibited slavery in the North and legalized it in the South, but left the question ultimately unsettled. And stunned by this news, Lincoln said he'd been roused as he had never been before over what it meant for America's future. And so, here in Springfield, at the State Fair, he got back in the game. He delivered the first of his great anti-slavery speeches to a crowd of thousands. And over the next 6 years, even as he lost 2 more political races, his arguments with Douglas and others shaped the national debate. That's when he uttered those brilliant words on the steps of the old state capitol that a house divided against itself cannot stand. That this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. He became the first Republican president, and I believe our greatest president. And through his will and his words, and most of all his character, he held a nation together, and he helped free a people. And those victories did not solve all of our problems. He would be attacked at times for the compromises he was prepared to make by abolitionists and folks from his own side. It would be 100 years more until the law guaranteed African Americans the equal rights. But because Lincoln made that decision not to give up and not to let other voices speak for him, and because he held in his mind the strength of principle, but the vision, the ability to understand those who disagreed with him, and showed them respect even as he fought them. Because of what he set in motion, generations of free men and women of all races and walks of life have had the chance to choose this country's course. What a great gift. What a great legacy he has bestowed us. And that's the thing about America. We are a constant work of progress. And our success has never been certain. None of our journey has been preordained. And there's always been a gap between our highest ideals and the reality that we witness every single day. But what makes us exceptional, what makes us Americans, is that we have fought wars and passed laws and reformed systems and organized unions and staged protests and launched mighty movements to close that gap and to bring the promise and the practice of America into closer alignment. We've made the effort to form that more perfect union. to the day that I first announced for this office, I still believe in that politics of hope. And for all the challenges of a rapidly changing world, and for all the imperfections of our democracy, the capacity to reach across our differences and choose that kind of politics, not a cynical politics, not a politics of fear, but that kind of politics, sustained over the tranquil and steady dedication of a lifetime. That's something that remains entirely up to us. Thank you, Illinois. God bless you. God bless America. It's good to see all of you.
Joining us here, we have been watching the President of the United States in his old stomping grounds. This is the Illinois State Capitol. This is Springfield, Illinois. This is the place he chose. He just invoked Abraham Lincoln, as he has many times before. That is the place where Abraham Lincoln gave his famous House Divided speech on the steps of the state capitol, and that is precisely where then Senator Barack Obama chose 9 years ago to tell the country he would be running for president. He has chosen this day 9 years later really to give an address on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the joint session do now arise.
President of the Senate has moved that the joint session is now arise. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The joint session will now arise. Regular session will come to order. Representative Curry, motion adjourned.
I move the House adjourn until the hour of 10 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday, February 11th.
We all heard the motion, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 10 a.m.
I regret about the speech today is that the concrete actions he talked about we need to take, especially political reform around our gerrymandering. I wish he had given that speech a number of years ago. It's very hard to get people excited about political reform. Everybody is for it in theory, but very few people vote on it. But it is the most, the way we draw our districts it is the most corrosive, direct, negative influence on our politics in Washington. More than money, more than anything else. If we could fix that, we could fix a lot.
Jay, let me stay with you, and just also to underscore your point, yes, in the very end, solutions being the districts being drawn. He says the debates are moving too far to the right when really the people are in the middle. They should go back to the middle, and also saying that, the modernization of American voting. But staying with you, the point that Gloria was making about how we've seen Hillary Clinton on the trail bear hugging the president. I'm curious, at what point along all these, springtime primaries do you think we will officially see the bear hug back from the president, that official endorsement? When?
Well, I think the president has signaled, while still remaining neutral, that he supports Secretary Clinton's candidacy and would prefer to see her as the nominee. He won't officially embrace her unless and until it's clear that she's going to be the nominee. I think he's maintaining that tradition of not intervening in a party primary. But I don't think there's any doubt that he wants Hillary to win the nomination and believes that she would be the best candidate in the fall and the most effective as president in carrying forward what he's achieved.
All right, Jay Carney, thank you very much. Gloria, let me ask you and David Gergen to stand by, as we're just now getting some breaking news here in the wake of this New Hampshire primary. I can now officially tell everyone that Carly Fiorina is officially dropping out of this race. She just made this announcement here on Facebook, and apparently she has a very specific message to young women, which is, I'm reading her note now. To young girls and women across the country, I say, do not let others define you. Do not listen to anyone who says you have to vote a certain way or for a certain candidate because you're a woman. That is not feminism. Gloria Borger. And I have David Chalian joining me now. Actually, let's go to David Chalian first. David, if you want to weigh in on more of what you're hearing from the Fiorina camp.
Well, listen, clearly Carly Fiorina had not either in Iowa or New Hampshire posted any kind of result that was going to allow her to raise the money necessary to move forward, to create the organization around her to move forward. What the Republicans lose here with Carly Fiorina's exit from the race is one of the most vocal critics of Hillary Clinton in the Republican field. This is how she entered the race and how she conducted herself pretty much all the way through, was to draw the sharpest possible contrast with Hillary Clinton, and that is something that she continually returned to, even when she was being sort of attacked in the center of attention from her fellow Republicans. She was always the one that was really trying to take the fight to Clinton.
Gloria, to you, your thoughts, and also this note to girls and women.
Her point always was that as a woman candidate, it would be easier for her to take the fight to Clinton because she wouldn't refrain in certain situations where men might refrain. I think her whole problem was that A, that wasn't enough. B, she wasn't going to make it on the main debate stage, if the debate stage at all. She'd been in the undercard debates, and she had her moments after her first debate. And she wasn't getting any traction. And if you look, her signal today is all those young women who are endorsing or looking at Bernie Sanders, fine. Just don't vote for a woman because she's a woman. I think obviously Republicans in many ways see Bernie Sanders as a much more vulnerable presidential contender than Hillary Clinton, and they like the fact that Sanders is giving Clinton a real run for money here. So there's no love lost between Carly Fiorina and Hillary Clinton.
Okay, David Gergen wants to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Carly Fiorina has lost her campaign, but she hasn't lost her voice. And I think we're going to find her returning to television studios like this one, talking to you about these issues, and by issuing that last final message, she's going to be very much in the fray on this argument about that, that Madeleine Albright and Gloria Steinem started last week scolding young women for supporting Bernie Sanders. That appeared to backfire. A lot of young women were sort of, wait a minute, but we're a new generation. Let us make up our own minds. And that argument is going to be pretty darn important as we go forward, as Hillary Clinton seeks out the support of women. So I think I think Carly Fiorina is going to stay in the fray, if you will, even if she doesn't stay in the race.
Interesting notice here from some folks who've done so many of these Bernie Sanders rallies and these young women who say they're not obviously in it for the boys. They say, listen, if it's ultimately not Bernie Sanders, they just won't vote.
Yeah.
I also happen to have standing by, we're so thrilled to have him back here on the show, Tim Pawlenty. Tim Pawlenty, former Republican governor of Minnesota who ran for president a couple of years ago. Governor, welcome back. As we're getting this news here about Carly Fiorina dropping out, your response?
Well, one thing I think voters are looking for is strength. They see that in Donald Trump. They see that in some other candidates. Carly had strength, and that was one of her strong appeals. She was also clear in her messaging, but she wasn't able to build the organization and get the fundraising she needed to continue on. So I agree with David's analysis. She's going to be an important voice, but her campaign ends today, obviously.
We are also, we know that Chris Christie is apparently, quote unquote, taking a breath back in New Jersey. Also questions about Dr. Carson's campaigns. Those are those who finished a little lower than everyone else in New Hampshire. If you were putting yourself in their shoes, would you hang in there or not?
Well, you can hang in there as long as you have money, but I think in the case of Chris's campaign, they were running out of money, and he wasn't going to make the debate stage, so it just comes to a practical end. And even before his Rubio moment, his numbers had sort of peaked in November, but then dipped again and kind of plateaued. And so there wasn't any real sign that this was catching fire. But he's going to be an incredible leader for the party, and I think for another strong voice for many years to come. He's got a big future.
On the Rubio moment, which I'm guessing, I could be wrong, the debate moments, the kamikaze attack, as I think Charles Krauthammer referred to it,
moment, are we on the verge of, any sign that we're on the verge of another financial crisis based on what you heard today from the Fed chair?
I don't think there's a financial crisis in the next month or two, but beyond that, it's clear that things are not quite as solid as they should be. We still have financial institutions that are too big to fail, but I don't see them failing in the next couple of months.
Congressman, thank you very much for coming to Washington following your testimony today with the Fed chair. That's Democratic Congressman Brad Sherman, but earlier, just a while ago, he spoke to Republican Southern California Congressman Ed Royce, also a member of the House Financial Services Committee.
A reminder, you can hear the KNX Money Hour again at 8 o'clock tonight, and you can find the link to the podcast on our website, cbsla.com. Coming up at 1:36, Congresswoman Maxine Waters encouraged you on the Fed chair's speech, and in just 5 minutes on the KNX Money Hour, which of the leading presidential candidates has the best financial plan?
This portion of news sponsored by the USC Memory and Aging Center Memory Loss Study.
Tonight, the Duo Girls hit big as video game stars.
You have to feel something like this. I like this what I'm hearing.
New Duo Girls, CBS.
It has no designated time, takes no holiday or break. It's all it happens when it happens. And if it affects you, we got the details for breaking news as it happens. And on Southern California's only 24-hour news and traffic station, KI-778 News Radio.
Doctors at USC see older volunteers suggest new treatments for memory problems that may improve symptoms or prevent further memory loss. These studies are funded by the National Institute of Health and pharmaceutical companies. People between the ages of 60 and 90 may be eligible. For more information, contact the University of Southern California Memory and Aging Center at 323-442-7600. That's 323-442-7600. 323-442-7600. Monitoring center, each only $9.99 per month to monitor your alarm system. Help stop the overpricing madness by joining the tens of thousands of satisfied Kansas customers now enjoying big savings.
Hey, I really like your stuff. Get protected by the monitoring center.
It's easy. Simply call us today at 1-866-2474-999.
How would you like to make an extra $1,278 monthly? Today, we invest in your real estate tax money certificate. Hi, I'm Tony Martinez, co-founder of USPLA. Over the last 20 years, I've been investing in tax money certificates making 16% to 25% secured fixed returns while acquiring highly discounted properties mortgage-free. Now, I want to show you how to with my 50-page revealing report called Proof Why Tax lien certificates are the superior vehicle for your financial success. In my report, you'll learn where to find tax lien certificates, how to safely earn 16 to 25% secured fixed returns, and how to acquire valuable real estate at huge discounts mortgage-free. Now, for a limited time, I'll give anyone that calls a free copy of my powerful new report.
Call 800-559-1577 now to get Tony's free report. Call 800-559-1577 in the next 30 minutes, and Tony will give you 2 free tickets to his crash course given to the Southern California area on $300 value. Call 800-559-1577. That's 800-559-1577 for your free report now.
Any Jane Doe can tell you that Geico can help you save, but it's money talks. We just ask for savings instead.
Greetings and salutations. I'm James Money, and I never knew my self-worth until James switched her car insurance at Geico.com. Those 15 minutes filled me up to real savings. Geico's been helping customers save money like me for over 75 years. So just fascinating. And namaste.
Geico, 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance.
A paid announcement. 91 Steer Clear is coming to Corona with a weekend full closure of eastbound and westbound 91 between the 71 and 15, February 19th through 22nd. Use the 57, 60, and 10 as detours. For information, visit spr91project.info.
Right, we got it together every 10 minutes on the last of this report now. Sponsored by Soup Plantation. What's happening, soundtrack?
Going on in the Inland Empire on the westbound side of the 60, just before Market Street. A crash here, pretty serious one. Has traffic back up to the 6215 interchange. Actually, slow back to Box Street Road. Jammed up on the Riverside interchange as well, trying to get 2 lanes from that 60. Also, on the 5 going southbound around the lake, State Lake area. We had this overturned tractor trailer from earlier this morning. They've been trying to upright this. It's just before Lacey's Road on the 5 southbound, plus 2 separate backup had delays, stretching back for about 5 miles. Only the left lane was open for a while while they tried to upright the vehicle. But it's kind of a mess here. Let's take a look at the Sky 2's taking a look at the San Marcos route.
Very nice. Super straight eastbound side of 1010 now crossing Velocity, heading up way up the left lane, so keep it for right, and expect to be frustrated by this back row about here, 4 miles south, stick with the freeway at this point. Westbound, lucky you, heading over Lawrence to San Marcos, goes cool down, not expect brake lights to slow you down.
Valentine's Day has come early. Soup Plantation is treating you to blue cheese and spice pecan salad now through Valentine's Day. Buy because they know you love blue cheese and spice pecan. Tossed with farm fresh greens. Soup Plantation. Discover fresh. Your next report, 135 Southern California's most frequent traffic reports and contract. KNX 1070 AM. 88's breeze right now in downtown Atlanta. You're listening to KNX 90 Hour, sponsored by your Southern California BMW Saturdays each weekday. This time we focus on your money and how you can keep more of it in your wallet. Frank Bozak, Walter Charles Sullivan. Well, Frank, as you know, the election candidates running for the White House is changing, it seems, by the minute. Some coming out, others moving ahead. But I think it's fair to say that most people today are talking about either Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or, for that matter, both. And more importantly, their differences in terms of their economic points of view. With us now is Paul Brandis, White House Bureau Chief for West Wing Report. Paul, these two men could not be more different. You got a billionaire capitalist, and of course would be Trump, and a Democratic socialist, and of course would be Sanders. But they think the same way on many issues, don't they?
Well, we would have thought that 6 months ago, either one of these guys would be in the position they are now, but you're right, and I think when you look at both of these candidates, both have one thing in common. They've both done a brilliant job from different vantage points of tapping into this deep anger and resentment that millions of Americans have against the establishment, and by that I mean, of course, Congress and big business and Wall Street. But you know that Trump, I think Trump is clearly a big businessman himself. He's a billionaire tycoon. He spent years doing business on Wall Street, lobbying politicians himself. You know, playing the game, he's really disingenuous and an opportunistic Democrat, I think, in what he's been talking about, whereas Sanders, his anger, he walks the walk. And Sanders' net worth is in the low 6 figures, probably the gold plating, and Trump's been down in the mansions worth more than that. So, with that aside, they don't sound like economic populists, but they're intervening at the same point, albeit coming from really different directions.
And their slogans resonating among young people and making America great again. And the other one, the issue you can believe in. Give us your reason why these candidates are resonating so well with millennials, for example, and what is the economic outlook if either get into office?
Well, the data in Iowa and New Hampshire shows that Sanders is crushing Clinton with these younger voters. One reason for that is millennials today get out of college with an average school debt of about $29,000. The job market is challenging for them in a way that it's not for older people. And when you have that kind of debt, of course, have trouble getting a job, good luck buying a house and getting on with your life, moving up the ladder and so forth. So there's anger, there's resentment. It's really the first generation that's come of age since the economic collapse of a decade ago, and they are paying the price for that. So their anger and resentment, I think, is well grounded. What's fascinating is that they see their savior to all this, a 74-year-old man who was elected to be the oldest person ever elected president. It's absolutely astonishing that somebody 25 sees the answer in a 74-year-old guy who calls himself a socialist. Absolutely remarkable.
Okay, a reminder, we will have complete coverage of the next Democratic debate tomorrow in Milwaukee, and on Saturday, you'll hear the whole CBS News Republican debate from Greenville, South Carolina. Coming up, though, in 5 minutes, KNX Radio Hour continues another local member of Congress gets her chance with the Fed chair. But now, let's get to the living stress. Former Sheriff Lee Lockett has agreed to plead guilty to lying to federal investigators who were investigating deputy misconduct at LA County jails.
Lockett is due to enter the guilty plea later this afternoon. No one is above the law. U.S. Attorney Ivy Becker. The former sheriff is charged with making false statements to the Department of Justice about his role in conspiring to intimidate an FBI agent and to shut down a federal investigation into corruption and civil rights abuses in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. Becker says Lockett could get up to 6 months in prison and the Monday 10. Now here's this piece like KNX and 70 News Radio.
Active attorneys due to talk to KNX after the former sheriff's court hearings this afternoon.
4 days after a near collision off St. Pedro, searchers have found the wreckage of the second small plane that was involved. The body of the pilot, a 72-year-old Torrance woman, was inside. The crash happened Friday afternoon. The first plane was found on Sunday, and the bodies of 2 men on board were recovered. The FAA is still trying to determine the cause of the collision.
And Hillary Clinton's campaign questioning the record of rival Bernie Sanders on issues affecting minorities as the race moves to the more diverse states of South Carolina and Nevada. Just a day after a sizable defeat in New Hampshire, Clinton's campaign supporters are attacking Sanders' record on gun control, criminal justice, and civil rights. Sanders plans to tout his work as a civil rights activist during his college years at the University of Chicago, and today in New York, where he now trucks.
After the KNX Money Hour, in 2 minutes, it's 1:33.
Are you worried a stock market crash is coming? If your retirement is doing, protect yourself now.
This is Ken Moraine, host of the Money Matters radio show, inviting you to our free seminar.
7 p.m. tonight, here in Hotel Manhattan Beach. 7 p.m. tomorrow, Courtyard, Los Angeles, Pasadena, Old Town. On 1 p.m. Saturday, Hilton Woodland Hills, Los Angeles. Ken was featured in boards, clients, and positive advice for Hours of Market in 2008. Register at moneymatters.net. That's moneymatters.net. Or call 800-994-0302. Again, 800-994.
Ma, how do you feel? I'm sure. Okay. Yeah, you're gonna need a couple, 3 days just to relax, Ma. You should take those earplugs I sent you. There was another Ethel Schwartz when I called too. Yeah, when I called, the lady said there's 2 Ethel Schwartzes. Because I said, you're the lady that had the balloon angioplasty. What noise? I'm just looking at the newspaper here. No, I'm looking at the Valentine's Day. There's crab and all kinds of stuff on sale this week. All right. mods, take a tide. And turn your cell phone back on, Ron. Oh, all right. Did you get my messages? Go look at your cell phone. I think there's 3. There were. I left messages, son. Just call. Take your cell phone and call your own number. Call 483. The 483 number, and then it'll take you right to your voicemail. Yeah. And today. Yeah. I said hello. All right, goodbye. What are you cooking for dinner, Dad? All right, good. Okay. No, I don't eat a lot anymore, Dad. Last night I had a salad and pinto beans, and that was it. Okay. I left 3 messages. Oh, look. I think we go to the store, they got a chili sale on. Chili! They're making chili. This is chili week. At the gourmet store that I go to. I am. Well, I am. They send you every week they send you a flyer with all the specials. All right. Anything else? Is that it? All right, good. Enjoy. I'll talk to you tomorrow. All right. Bye.